as I close this out, I've got a little story to share with everybody. I started talking about this last night, right? When I talked about why Louisville. And I shared that I prayed about it, and we were inspired to have the event in this location. And then I was asking myself, well, what's unique about Louisville? And discovered, this is the hometown of Muhammad Ali. And that's what inspired this whole, the year of the fight theme and the fight of your life theme for the event. And so this is going to continue a little bit. You're going to see where really I believe the hand of God was kind of in this whole thing from the beginning. That obviously, knew I needed to experience what I'm going to share with you, because there is a message, there is a story to be told in this moment. Now, I talked a little bit yesterday about Muhammad Ali, and just this amazing athlete, a champion of champions. But he was also pretty prolific, right? I mean, he was relentless. He was powerful, right? Those are things we need to be, right? But you know what else? If you know one thing about Muhammad Ali, he was like the greatest self-talker ever, right? I float like a butterfly. I sting like a bee. What's my name? Muhammad Ali, right? And listen to some of this self-talk. I mean, this is right after he won his big fight against Sonny Liston. And in that fight, he was the underdog. Everyone thought he was going to lose. And in that fight, he even, hit him really hard and got a cut under Sonny Liston's eye, right? This is Muhammad Ali after the fight. This man's always a poet in everything he does, right? He's like, I'm so great, I don't have a mark on my face, right? I just upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world. He goes on and on, right? He goes, he ended up, it was a TKO because Sonny Liston got so wrecked that his shoulder was pulled out of the socket, right? So they TKO'd him in the 8th. And Muhammad Ali said he was going to take him out in the 8th. That's what he predicted. Wow. He's like, I was so great, I'm going to take him in 8th, right? That's what he was saying, right? And then so he was like, I was ready to take him in 8th, as you can see, but the man stopped. It was just for making me look so great. He wanted to go to heaven, so I took him in 7th. I'm the king of the world. I'm pretty. I'm a bad man. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. Are your affirmations like that? This guy knows what self-talk is all about, right? So, I was just inspired the theme's going to be the fight of our life. So, we're going to fast forward to this was back in November, I believe. Okay? So I went hunting. And so I'm visiting my best friend from high school. And I just went hunting for the first time in my life last year. It was awesome. So I went out there again this year. And so this is the second day of the hunt. And he drops me off at this area where, we're close to the tree stand that I'm going to be hunting out of. And as I'm walking out of the truck, he says to me, Frank, the cell phone reception around here, maybe not so good. I got a walkie-talkie for you. Would you like to take the walkie-talkie just in case? And me, in my infinite wisdom, said, nah, I got Verizon. It's great coverage. I don't need the walkie-talkie, right? So Then I work, my way over to the tree stand, and I'm up there, and I'm like, one thing I love about the hunting is just the peace and serenity surrounded by nature. And as I'm just kind of digging that, well, one of the unique things about this property that we're hunting on is that it's his uncle-in-law's farm, and he lets his cows roam all over this farm. So every now and then, while we're up here, I'm up in the stand, right? There'll be some cows that will come along, right? And so there's like these cows coming up the trail, and I'm like, I grab my cell phone, I'm going to take a picture of the cow, and I'm going to text Rodney, hey, the deer are huge over at this time, right? And so I go to text him, and there's 4% left on my phone, right? So, all right, I'm not thinking anything of it too much.
Did you have the walkie-talkie?
I didn't have the walkie-talkie. All right, so anyhow, the 4% of the phone, I'm like, all right, no big deal. I'm not that worried because I know even as the phone runs out, I'm going to eventually meet Rodney back by the road, close to where he dropped me off, and, it's not like I'm going to get lost. I'm sitting up in the tree stand a little bit more, probably about maybe 15, 20 minutes later, and I hear some noise, and over to the right was this beautiful, 8 or 9 point buck. It's like this, one of the perfect, but it just so happens that the day before, I actually used my, what's called your any deer tag on a doe last minute, and I couldn't buy a doe tag. So Rodney made a joke with me. He said, hey, if you see a buck, because that means I can't shoot a buck anymore, right? If you see a buck, all you get to do is take a picture of it. Yeah. So I thought, all right, I'm going to take a picture of it, right? And as I go to take a picture of it, well, the phone is now completely dead, right? So, all right, I'm just waiting out the rest of the time that I'm going to be there. The sun is starting to go down. And I decide I'm going to get out of the tree stand before it gets too terribly dark. And I'm going to make my way back to the area that Rodney dropped me off. And so I walk back, and I'm sitting there. I didn't want to wait right by the fence line, and there was this big oak tree back a ways. So I was just kind of set my gun down, and I'm just kind of chilling, leaning against the oak tree, and I am just digging just the serenity, twilight is fading into the night. I'm watching the stars just begin to fall out. I had a thought in my head as this happened. In fact, you kind of see that hat I was wearing, right? I thought, if it gets too dark out here, I'm going to push that little button on the top of my hat, which turns on this light. That way, because there is this possibility he could just kind of ramble past me, not know, because I was far enough away. And so I'm going to make sure I turn that light on. And so maybe another 10, 15 minutes goes by. It's now completely dark, right? It's one of those really pitch dark nights. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn my light on. And I'm waiting for Rodney. And off to the right, I hear a little crinkle. And my first thought is, hey, maybe it's a deer, maybe it's a doe. I might get out of this with another one, right? And so I turn my light on, and I look over to the right. And I see down about maybe just a foot off the ground is a pair of eyes shining back at me. Right? And I'm thinking it's a raccoon, something like that, But it was far enough away where all I could see were the eyes, right? And so now I'm just kind of curious. I'm waiting for it to come maybe a little closer, step into the range of the light, and I can see what this thing is, right? And curious enough, as I'm looking at it, it's staring back at me. So I'm like, maybe it's not a raccoon, maybe it's a possum, it's just kind of frozen there. And it's just staring back at me. And then it lifts its head up about 3.5 feet off the ground.
Okay.
And so at that moment, I'm like, that is not a raccoon. Okay? And so and it's still staring at me. And so now I'm like, okay, you know what? There are coyotes in this neck of the woods. There's a chance that might be a coyote, right? I'm not too terribly scared of a coyote. I mean, they don't usually attack people, you know, but I'm still kind of like intrigued at this moment, and I'm just watching it, and there's just this moment, and maybe a few more minutes goes by, and a car comes up the road, right? And I'm thinking, okay, the lights are going to hit it as it passes. I'll see what this dadgum thing is, right? And so the car comes, but then it turns down the other way. But it had done enough to make this creature decide it wants to move, right? So it moves from over here. And understand, this thing is about maybe 20 feet away from me, right? And it moves, and it decides to move away from that road over there, and it moves right there. And the entire time it moved, it did not take its eyes off of me.
Oh, yeah.
Not once. Right? So now I'm really getting this predator-like vibe. Okay? And so as I'm sitting there, I'm just kind of looking at it, like, okay, if it's a coyote, a lot of times there's more than one around, so I'm kind of checking this way, checking that way. This thing is still, and it's right outside of that range where I can't even make out the outline of what this is. And as I started, okay, I'm going to scare it off. So now I'm like, right? And this thing does not budge. So now I'm thinking, okay, if it is a coyote, and if it is kind of lost its mind, and it does, I mean, you guys, look, I am tasty, okay? So it could have been that tempting, right? So I said, okay, I grab my gun against the, and the thing is, responsibly, I can't just shoot at it in the dark, right? Don't know what it is, right? So I'm just waiting, because if it's gonna do something, I gotta at least be able to get a good shot off at it, right? And so now we're just in this. It felt like an eternity, but it really couldn't have been more than, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. But now we're just like staring. Every now and then I'd see a little blink, right? And so now we're just looking at each other. I'm staring at it. And then it turns around and moves away. And then it turns around again. And now I can barely see the eyes. I still see the eyes, right? But now I can barely see them. And I'm like, at this moment, I don't know if this was reality or it's one of those moments where your mind starts playing tricks on you, but I could have swore it felt like the light was starting to dim from my hat, right? And so it's staring at me, and I'm like, okay. And I'm just staring back at it. And then another few more minutes, which again seems like eternity. It turns around again. And it must have, and I don't see it. So I don't know if it figured out that if it turns around, I can't see its eyes anymore. Maybe it's trying to flank me, right? What is this thing doing, right? And this whole time, I'm not really scared because I'm pretty convinced this is a coyote, right? There was almost more of an intrigue in this moment to me, right? But after a minute or two, I hear off in the distance, in the direction from where this animal went, I hear this. And then I hear about a minute or two later, and And then another minute or two goes by, and I hear like 3 times. And I'm like, that was not a coyote. So now, I'm like 98 convinced this is a mountain lion. I mean, they're not that common in that area, but they definitely are in that area. And the farmer on the land we were hunting the day before even said, yeah, back over that way, they've seen a cougar running around. And you're thinking in that moment, right, cool, maybe I'll see it in my binoculars somewhere when I'm up in my tree stand, okay? But I want you to remember a detail, because it's important. Where were its eyes when I first saw it? It was 20 feet away, 1 foot off the ground. A mountain lion has about a 15-foot leap. That was literally ready to jump. Now, I'm not going to share this back because I happen to be that smart. I might think I am, but it's because after you experience something like this, you start Googling stuff, right? So, in the last 100 years, there have been 126 attacks of mountain lions on human beings, and about 24 of them have been fatal. So they're not always fatal, but they definitely are going to mess you up. Like, these things are 150 to 180 pounds, depends if it's a female or male, right? I mean, they got some serious weapons on them, right? That thing was literally scoping me out for the kill. And if it wasn't for the fact that I turned the light on and revealed it in the darkness, it would have been after me. My gun was laying against the tree. And I would have really been trying to fight this thing off with my bare hands at that point. Which, not a good matchup. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? And so, after this experience, and of course the other thing we Google is what sounds do a mountain lion make? Because I want to make sure, right? And I'm telling you, we go on there, we Google the sounds, and the first thing we hear is kind of like a growl. No, that wasn't it. Second sound, no, that third sound, I literally blood-curdling chill goes down my body, because you understand, the whole moment I wasn't even thinking that this was what this was. And now I knew beyond all shadow of a doubt that I was being stalked by a mountain lion. Wow. And I'm going to tell you something. I learned some lessons from that experience. I bet. I learned some lessons today, and I'm going to tell you, this was meant to happen. Because this is such a parable for what a lot of us are even going through right now. So, my lessons from the lion. I think the first one is, be prepared. Frank, would you like to take this walkie-talkie with you? Yes. And what was my answer? Right. Hey, no, I don't need anything, right? I didn't have a knife on me. I didn't have a sidearm on me. Like all the things that you really should have. I didn't have a flashlight on me. If I would have had a flashlight, I could clearly have seen what this was. So one of the things that I've learned in business is in all things that you do, you should be prepared. You should be prepared when you go on an appointment. You should be prepared as you're recruiting people. You should be prepared because the competition is out there. You think the competition just came along lately? Are you kidding me? I'll tell you stories and stories. Be prepared. That's part of the deal. Be prepared to face adversity. How can you be surprised that adversity is going to come? You can't be surprised adversity is going to come. Who was it that said it? It was Rich in his talk, right? He goes, you can't grow without the resistance. So if you want to grow, if after this event you're thinking to yourself, I want to do something, I want to make it happen, I want to step up, I want a vertical incline, you're going to have to grow, and that means you're going to have resistance. Be prepared for adversity because it's going to happen. That's part of the deal. Be aware. How often do we start getting into autopilot? Like I was truly almost guilty of being unaware. If it was not, I want you to understand something. I believed all my life that that was an angel or something going on there. That because when I heard that crickle, right? And I turned that light on, I guarantee you that cougar was like this. Crap. Right? But, if it wasn't for that divine intervention in that moment, I was not aware. I cannot tell you how many of you right now at this moment, you are not aware that adversary, adversity, are stalking you right now. Yep. They're stalking you right now. And you're not aware of it. Okay. Be aware. Don't be taken by surprise. Don't be shocked when something happens. And then, stand your ground. Because I'll tell you what could have happened in that moment. Now, if I would have decided to run, you understand? Which that's the other lesson. Never run. If I would have turned around to run, that's it. There is literally there's an automatic response in predators like cougars that when the prey turns around and runs, bam! They're not even thinking. They're just like, bam! Right? I literally, my life was in mortal danger in that moment. I was literally in the middle of the fight of my life and did not know it at that moment. Tell me that there wasn't something being taught to me that needed to be shared at this time, in this moment, with everything we see going around us. I can't explain to you how freaky that was. I had to search the internet to find it, but I'm telling you, that is literally what I was looking at. This is 20 feet away from me. It's not even as far as that table is back there. And we're just looking at each other. Just looking at each other. Right? Be sober. Yes. Be vigilant. Because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. That's the word. Yep, that's the word. That's the word of God. Adversity wants to take you out. And if it can't take you out 23 out of the 126 times, it is going to at least try to maim you. Be aware. Be vigilant. Be sober. You cannot be casual in the fight of life. You have to aggressively be engaged in the fight of life. You can't, Les Brown, you can't take life casual, you end up a casualty. Right? And I want to challenge you. The gloves are off. The gloves are off. I'm not trying to use a fear tactic. I'm trying to make you aware of what is reality, what is out there. And it's not something that just happened lately. It's not something that just happened the last month or two. It's not just something that happened back in November. Sean just got done telling you.
Yes.
Man, they've had lions circling them plenty of times before. Right? So, here's my challenge. Never run. Stand your ground. I'll tell you right now, I will stand my ground. When I said I have planted my flag, you can count on it that my flag ain't going anywhere until they rip it out of my dead cold hand. When I say to somebody, I am in this deal with you until we reach the promised land, you are never going to be able to say, I ditched you along the way. You are never going to be able to say that I promised if you follow me, we're going to get there. And then what did I do? I took a detour. I hopped on another bus. That is not going to happen.
All right, Frank.
Not if you're with this dude. Okay? Fight like your life depends on it because it does. Sean, I appreciate so much of what you shared today. Do you think Sean would have been able to have done what he's done if he didn't consistently go after it and fight? You understand? Fight is an action word, right? It's not a passive word, right? It means you are actively, aggressively engaged in the battle. And if you do, you will win the fight of your life. One of my favorite movies is a movie called Sucker Punch. And anyone that's been through EPC, you've seen several scenes of it. And at the very end, it kind of wraps up, because the movie's almost like a parable or an allegory. At the end of the movie, it's wrapped up in this statement. You have all the weapons you need.
Yes.
You have all the weapons you need.
Yes.
Sean shared that there were some things that he struggled with, but you know what? He realized it was just something that he had to overcome. He went and did it anyways. He fought the battle anyways. You know, courage is not the absence of fear, but it is actually having fear and still fighting the fight.
Yes.
Instead of turning tail and run. I want every one of you to know in this room, you have all the weapons you need. You have all the weapons you need. You are not lacking in anything. You are not wanting in anything. You do not have some kind of inferior contract. You don't have an inferior company. You don't have inferior leadership. You have all the weapons you need to win. So I challenge you to go and fight.
Yes, sir.
I will see you at the top of our station crowd.